Yes.
Good morning, welcome to Strip Club.
Good morning.
I have a pattern today called Bellagio. Why is it called Bellagio? Because it reminds me of the beautiful tile work in the casinos. I mean, how many of you have gone into, I'm going to say a lobby, but also, you know, maybe a bathroom, and the tile work is just so stunning that you're like, ooh, that'd make a pretty quilt. Not that this actually comes from tile work, but it does remind me of tile work. It looks complicated. It's not. And I'm going to start by backing up a little bit and going over some very basics of quilting. So forgive me if it's rudimentary, but I want to point out a few things, and then I'm going to show you how this quilt is just a little bit different. Okay, I have props today. They're paper props. This is a block. And let me tell you, it is much easier to make a block out of paper than out of fabric. However, it's very rigid, and I'm not sure I would want to cuddle with this. Okay, so this is a basic block. It's a square. Blocks don't have to be square, but this one is square. And in some quilts, we will set blocks one right next to the other, straight set, like this. This is fun. When I was a kid, I had a little tile set. Maybe that's where my love of design started. All these little squares and rectangles, I'd make different, you know. Does anybody have this little toy thing? I loved that. All right, 4 blocks. This is a straight set. You can also set 4 blocks with sashing in between them. And most of the time when we have sashing, it's narrower than the blocks, like this, right? When you have sashing, they go between each of the blocks, and then you'll have holes where the sashing meet. And what goes there, boys and girls? Cornerstones. Cornerstones. Okay, so do you like the dashed lines? A nice effect, 1/4-inch seam, yeah. Okay, so here we have sashing between each of the blocks, and now we'll put cornerstone between each of the sashings. Many blocks, many quilts, you'll have many blocks, and the sashing will go between the blocks, and then you'll go straight to borders. On some quilt patterns, you have the sashing continue out to be your first border. So you will have another row like this. This just takes the sashing and the cornerstone effect out to the borders. And you do it on the other side. So some quilts are like that. Now you also have quilts that are set on point. So quilts on point are angled slightly differently, and they too can have sashing. And in this case, they can have sashing that goes diagonally like this. I watched one of my previous videos. I drop stuff a lot. I had an old boss that said, "Why do girls always drop things?" After I had just was walking down the hall and just dropped my keys. Boom, dropped my keys. It's like, why do you guys do that? I don't understand. Because why? We're doing 12,000 things at once? Oops. All right, so my point of this is to show you this worked out so much better in my head. Yeah, okay, so my point was to show you that here on point, you have sashing between each block, and then you have cornerstone as everything is on point. So my point of the on point, thank you for laughing at that. Most of the time, we're used to seeing a block and then sashing at a smaller size, and then cornerstones the same width as the sashing. This quilt is a block set on point with sashing and cornerstones. The big difference is the sashing and the cornerstones are the same size as the block, giving us 3 components to make this quilt. So that's why the visual, because if I were to say this in words, it may not come across as well. The sashing here is narrower than the block. I'm going to point out the different components in this quilt. First, we'll start with the block. The main block is this. The sashing is this piece here. It is also the exact same size as this piece, a little different when making a quilt that has sashing. And now the cornerstone is that block. Now you can see how it all comes together. Much easier than it looks. So here, to start at the top left, this is sashing. This is the block, sashing. Cornerstone, sashing, block. There will be more sashing blocks than block blocks. Okay? So now that I've spelled that out, let's get into the fabrics. Strips, the light colored fabric is your background, and then we add accent. The black here is the accent. It's to set it. It's to make the design come alive. This particular fabric is Tonga Posy. This is my next collection with Timeless Treasures. Very sweet, soft. Reminds me of paper flowers. Something you might have in a paper flower bridal bouquet. The black is not from the collection. Everything else is. So the black has distinct contrast to everything else in the strips. So you want to see how the blocks come together? I can't even say it. I was going to say very hard, but I can't even say it. Okay, so the block, the main block, looks like this. And in order to make it, you will have your background fabric, a square, God bless you, 2 little pieces, 1 on each side, 2 segments on either side like that. Main block. These are all 2.5-inch strips. Main block. Bless you. Sashing. I'm going to sash in third. Cornerstone. To make the cornerstones, we are strip piecing. Should I take them down? Yeah, you can tell they're in my way now. No value. I can't even turn these into a quilt now. Just add water. Oh, if only it were that easy, right? Which I say that jestingly. Is that a word, jestingly? We love the process. That's why we do it. The tearing down, building back up, tearing down. Look, it's pretty. Okay, background strip, strip, background strip. Cut into segments. Next. Print strip, background strip, print strip. Cut into segments. It's your basic 9-patch. You will make more of these than you think you need. Stay tuned for why. 2 like this, switch around your colors on either side of this one. 2 like this. Cornerstone. Sashing. Background, accent. Cut a segment, Remember that thing I said, you make more than you think you need? Like that. Another one on the other side to make, oh, here, I'll put it up here, sashing. Those are your 3 simple components.
And they're all the same size.
They are all the same size. And that's why the sashing and these cornerstones are a little different than what we often do with sashing and cornerstones. Shall I point them out again in the quilt now? Okay, main block. Over here, main block. Cornerstone, 9 patch. Over here, cornerstone. Sashing. Over here, sashing. Notice the sashing pieces alternate. You twist and turn the sashing pieces so the accent always hits the main block. That leaves the 9 patch without any accent around it, which sets it off. So this pulls, there you have positive color, negative, then positive, and then negative. And then going diagonally here, you have sort of a dot, dot, dash thing going on. Dot, dash, dot, dash. It's a neat effect for how the pieces come together. So I get to play with the same tile game that I did as a little kid, now in fabric. These are your setting triangles. In order to assemble this quilt, you have to assemble it by rows. They start diagonally, so everybody has to look at the quilt and tilt your head like this. And this triangle, sashing triangle, is your first row. So you will sew those 3 pieces together. Triangle, sashing, main block, sashing triangle, your second row. You will add the triangles, well, you will trim the triangles so that they're flush with the top of the row before you attach it to the row above it. This little triangle on the top is different than this triangle. The pattern will tell you. I have always, and I try always in the patterns to say, when you cut your setting, your corner triangles, you need 4 of them. Every quilt needs 4. You pin them together, and you will use them last. The reason I say pin them together is you don't want to accidentally use them as your setting triangle because they are cut differently. It is a square cut once so that the straight of grain is on the outer edges. The setting triangle is a square diagonally cut twice, so now the straight of grain is on the long side. So it's a different triangle cut. So when I tell you to cut the corner triangles, take the 4 of them, pin them together, set them aside. Don't use them until the very end. We will sew our rows together first. Then we will sew those rows together to make the quilt, and only then do we add those corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is set on point. So your edges, the corner triangles might be a little off, so we trim them. The pattern will tell you how to trim them. And I have designed this so that there's a little float in there, so it's a little forgiving. And a float, I mean between this black accent to the border, there's a little wiggle room. So it just gives us a little buffer. Because it's set on point, highly recommend you measure the length of your quilt before you put your side borders on. And you measure it in 3 places: the left, the center, and the right. Or for you, the left, the center, and the right. Find the average of that. That is your border length. Cut your border sides to match, attach to your quilt. Once those borders are on, do the same, measuring the top, the middle, and the bottom to come up with your top and bottom borders. An on-point quilt can wiggle a little bit, so if you just slap on the borders, you may have wavy borders just a little bit. Always advise that. Always write that in the patterns. So this is Bellagio. Is it good?
Yes.
You have any questions about it?
What size is that?
This is the twin. Thank you. This, the twin uses not as many strips as you think it uses. I think it's 19. There are 19 strips in the twin, and the pattern is written for 5 different sizes: lap, throw, twin, queen, king. The king size uses 40 strips. So if you have a bundle of 40 strips, you can go up to a king size. You also will need your background and your accent fabric. That's good, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's a nice way to show off a fabric collection. The quilting design that you see in here is one of my mom's quilting designs. She is Quilter's Niche. She has created digitized quilting designs, and she sells them online. This is called, I think it's Meandering Leaves. Mm-hmm. That's nice, isn't it? And now, are there any questions? Is anyone going to give me the question I get every month? Is there another colorway? So glad you asked. This is also one of my mom's quilting designs. This one is called Fireworks. Get the right from the bottom to the top to the thing. I think. Is it nice? So now we can see it, how it looks in more patriotic colors. This is a Moda collection. So this started as a jelly roll. And then, of course, we added the navy as the accent. A nice cream. And notice the setting triangles in both quilts are different than the background. It doesn't have to be, but a little bit of difference is nice for that setting. Yes, I'll show you the quilting. You ready?
You really can do a king out of one jelly roll.
You really can do a king out of one jelly roll. Yeah.
Oh, I see the flag.
Do you see the flags?
Yeah.
Flags and fireworks. Oh, the front's very pretty.
Is that the throw size?
I do believe this is a throw size. If somebody has a pattern and this is 3 by 3,
Yes,
it's a throw. So this one is 3 by 5. 4? Okay, 3 by 4. Okay, nobody be offended at this. And when we say 3 by 4, you'll see a lot more than 3 blocks on this quilt, and you may want to count these, but you know now these are sashing. These are your blocks: 1, 2, 3 by 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mm-hmm. 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 This is such a sparkly, fun thing. I wish this had the little noise and things would turn into, I don't know, carriages, doormen, glass slippers. Okay, Bellagio. Is the name good? Do we like the name? Brilliant. Thank you. No other questions? All right. Tonga Posy is the collection line. Bellagio is the pattern name. And if there's no other questions, how about we just do this again next month for another pattern that uses 2.5-inch strips. Tonga Posy's in stores in April. Thank you. Okay, you guys, thank you very much for coming.
No.